Now we're going to talk to Joshua Horowitz. He is one of the he's the executive director of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and he's the author of Guns, Democracy, and the Insurrectionist Idea. Joshua, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming on. So first, I understand that you're an enemy of the Second Amendment, and you're one of those Marxist fascist socialists. That's obviously true, right?
Right, of course, yeah.
Okay. So why are you an enemy of the Second Amendment?
Well, obviously, I'm not an enemy of the Second Amendment. We, this book just talks about what the true meaning of the Second Amendment is, and what we think it really means. There's been a lot of discussion about how the Second Amendment its purpose is to be able to allow people to have guns so that they can commit political violence against the state. And I think that that idea has sort of seeped into the population, and I think that idea is really just misplaced. We see a lot of people carrying guns to healthcare events and things like that, and doing it in the name of the Second Amendment. But of course, the implied threat there is that they could use those guns if the healthcare debate doesn't go their way. So I think it's important that we understand that's really not the intent of the Second Amendment.
Okay, so I want to get to that issue. That's a very serious issue, and I agree with you on that. But let's tackle what we think the Second Amendment actually means. Now, one interpretation is that everyone has a right to a firearms. The other interpretation is only within the context of a well-regulated militia. First, of those, which do you think is the more correct interpretation?
Well, I think that's not really the right choice. I think the choice is what's the purpose of the amendment, and then you can think about why. Is it you're sort of saying, well, is it a collective right or is it an individual right? I think the purpose is trying to figure out what the framers are trying to get at. Once you get that, once you understand what that's about, it doesn't really matter, in my view, whether it's looked at as individuals have a right to have firearms. It's what they have the right to do with those firearms. And this case, the Heller case, that was the first case to overturn D.C.'s gun laws. Justice Scalia was all over the place, and he, ultimately found that people have a right to have a gun in the home. And what, I can live with that holding, but I think which was really disturbing was what he really struggled for the reason they could have a gun in the home. And the question is the Second Amendment just about, is it a right for self-defense? Or is it something like, Mike Huckabee always likes to say, is Second Amendment's not about duck hunting, right? It's a political statement. And I actually I believe that it's in the nature of a political statement. I just don't believe it's the one that says you have the right to take on the government. I believe that the statement of the Second Amendment is the states get to do what they want with the militia. And it doesn't really matter whether it's the state's collective right to do that or it's individuals' participation. The purpose of the Second Amendment was to protect the institution of the state militia from the federal government. And so I don't like to get into this distinction with do you have a right to have a gun, you don't have a right to a gun. That's not really what the purpose is, because either that's not as important as what's the purpose of the amendment.
Yeah, Joshua, I'm not sure I agree with you because as I read that amendment, now we might have the same legislative goals, right? But as I interpret that amendment, it seems clear that the founders wanted it as a check on the federal government. Now, you say it's through the states, and some others say it's through private, individuals. But isn't it the same one way or another that if the federal government encroaches too much on people's rights one way or another, that they can use those guns?
No, I think that's just, I think, it is about federal encroachment, but it's not federal encroachment in the terms of if the federal government gets tyrannical. What they were concerned about was federal encroachment on the state militia. And so, it says like a well-regulated militia right in the Second Amendment, as you know, right?
Right.
And it says for the security of the free state. It's obviously that the preamble has something to do with,
Well, what would the state do with those weapons if the federal government encroached on their rights?
Well, so think about what the state militia did at that time. Okay, state militias were a badge of citizenship, just like being on, being able to vote, being able to serve on juries, being able to be in a city, a town council member. And the real thing is, and if you look at the debates, and I don't think most people do, Patrick Henry and George Mason weren't concerned about individual rights to have firearms. You know what they were concerned about? They were concerned about making sure the militia was available for slave patrols. So they wanted to make sure that the federal government wouldn't usurp the militia. And there's nothing in those debates that indicates anything else. There was, I mean, obviously, you can find quotes here and there from people who said, we've protected the right of the people to have guns. But what they were referring to was the idea that the state should have control of their own militia.
Going back and finding original intent, that's clever. and it's important that, of course, that you did that and that others take note of that. And we're talking to Joshua Horowitz. He co-authored the book Guns, Democracy, and the Insurrectionist Idea. But, as I look at the amendment overall, no matter how you interpret it, I think it's completely antiquated. We had states pick up weapons against the Union. That led to a civil war. Wasn't that good an idea?
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's sort of amazing that people after the Civil War still think that that interpretation, this insurrectionist idea of the Second Amendment has vitality. I mean, Lincoln in his inaugural address said that taking up arms against the government is against constitutionalism in general and against our Constitution. And he said, taking up arms against the United States is either insurrectionary or revolutionary according to circumstances. And interestingly, in the first draft of his speech, instead of revolutionary, he used the word treasonable to give you an idea of what he thought. So when people say, I want to have a gun to take up arms against the government in case it gets tyrannical, that cannot be an individual right. It can't be.
But the thing is, it is. And, I mean, that's the tricky thing about the Constitution, Joshua. If we're honest about this, a bunch of revolutionaries wrote it. And they did. They had just, done a revolution. But they wrote a document for a state that has to exist. And so when the state continues, obviously it wants to protect itself at some point. So I'm not sure it makes sense to have something in the document that says every once in a while, we encourage states or individuals, et cetera, to overthrow the government. And that, to me, is part of the implication of the Second Amendment.
Well, look, you brought up a great point. These guys at some point were revolutionaries, right? But remember, people forget that the Constitution wasn't drafted in 1776. It was drafted in 1787, okay? And those 11 years were very formative for our young people. So in 1776, we fought the British in a revolutionary capacity. But, the people who fought that Revolutionary War, and I'm speaking specifically of George Washington, realized that the form of government that we had chosen, basically a continuing resolution, wouldn't work. And after the war, when he was resigning his commission, he was treated to feasts all over the country. And in Wilmington, Delaware, after 13 toasts, he got up and they said, "What's your toast, General Washington?" And he said, "Competent powers to Congress for general purposes." And what he meant was, I'm sick of our army starving in the land. Okay, we need a government that can tax, that can raise an army. And so after Shays' Rebellion in 1786, when the country was so scared about disunion, I mean, if you don't know what Shays' Rebellion was, this was when individuals took up arms, formed their own militia companies, took over the courts in western Massachusetts. That was the event that drove Washington back to public life. He resigned his commission and said, we need a strong government. Shays' Rebellion, happened. The strong government never got formed. Those men went back to Philadelphia in 1787 to make a strong government. And that government, in that document, says that the federal government can call out the militia to suppress insurrection. It doesn't say to foment insurrection, right? It says
I understand, but even after Shays' Rebellion, they passed the Second Amendment, saying that the state militias have the right to bear arms. So...
Right. Well, of course. So this document was drafted, and people and you're getting to the point. People were concerned, and what was known as the anti-federalists were concerned that the standing army, the federal government, would usurp the function of the militia. So you've got to my point. The Second Amendment is about protecting that institution. Some states will have very broad interpretations and say, look, everybody should have a gun in their home, right? Because that's the way we protect our militias, and other states won't. Okay, they'll have very different views, but I think the history can only show that this is a federalism provision, and that's what the discussion was about in these debates. So, yeah, we changed our form of government. We started as a revolution, but we ended as a constitutional democracy.
We're talking to Joshua Horowitz. He's the executive director of Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. He's also the co-author of Guns, Democracy, and the Insurrectionist Idea. Look, we could have a slightly different interpretation of what the Second Amendment means, and we could have a different idea of what to do with it. I think it's totally antiquated, and I think there's an excellent case to be made to repeal it. But that, you got to go through the whole constitutional process. Right. And that's a hell of a thing. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. Now, but having said that, this idea that you can grab your gun and fight the government as an individual is mental.
Yeah.
And that we have complete agreement on.
Yeah.
And the government needs to get, somehow get in front of this idea, because this idea is very, very dangerous. And if it holds, and right now it's already being used in Pittsburgh, in Florida, 3 cops shot in Pittsburgh, 2 in Florida, and all across the country there are different people writing notes. In Maine, a bomb.
And in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. And these guys are killing people based on this crazy idea.
Absolutely.
So the final question is, what can the government do?
Well, I think we have to be very careful about criminalizing this type of behavior, because the type of discussion. We don't want to criminalize the discussion. We do want to do something about the behavior. And I think in many ways this is less – I think what the government can do, this is something that the people need to do. And we need to say as a people, this is unacceptable. We need to educate our neighbors. And I hope if you read the book, we'll give you the tools to say, you're right, political violence, whether it's guns, knives, or anything, that idea that individuals have a right to political violence is an anathema to our most fundamental value as Americans, which is equality. One person, one vote. It's not one gun, one person, one vote. It's one person, one vote involved. And that's our most cherished value. And to see people saying, I'm more equal because if you pass health care reform, I'm going to take my guns up. That means that the rest of us are now disenfranchised, and that is an anathema to American values.
And unfortunately, the more it seems like the Republicans are going to be a minority for a long time in this country, politically speaking, the more they start talking about guns. And that's a very scary trend. And so, it's you do a good service in your book by pointing out that trend. And the book is Guns, Democracy, and the Insurrectionist Idea. Joshua, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Me too.
Watch more clips at theyoungturks.com.